Hello, welcome to the channel. My name is CavemanAston, and as some of you know, I've been making some pens. So I've made this brass one. I haven't recorded any of this because it's a surprise, but I have been making a pen for my nan for Christmas. And I've also turned a big 12mm, I think, big nut into two sets of rings here with a friend of mine. Came over at the weekend. Part of the problem with all of these, especially the pens, I'm wanting to get into making the pens, possibly even selling them if they're any good. What I really want to be able to do is have a really nice polished finish. So I've been hunting around, and after a lot of manually attempting to polish, I've decided I'm going to resurrect a ball mill that I made many years ago. Originally I made it with a expansion tank and a washing machine motor. It wasn't very good because I had a light dimmer switch that I used to control the speed of the motor. Not a great way to do it for any of you that might be thinking of copying me on that. Don't try it. It just about made it. Used to sit there spin. Every so often it would slow down too much and the motor would stall. Sometimes it would speed up and then all of the material would stick to the outside of the ball mill and it wouldn't work very well. So I'm going to take you through the process of me rebuilding / improving slightly on a design that I came up with. Come along for the ride. So here is a general selection of stuff that I've got. The ball mill centres around this, which is a expansion vessel for plumbing. I don't know if it's a typically British thing, but it's something that I happened to stumble across at some point in my past. Decided it might come in useful one day and kept it. But basically, in the back there is normally a standard like tyre valve. You pressurise this, and then at this end there's like a big rubber chamber that sits inside of it. The water fills the rubber chamber, and then the air at the back pressurises it, so that if there's any fluctuation in water pressure, this helps to stabilise it between the air pressure and the water pressure. So at the time I've taken out the rubber inner bit. I've then taken out the valve at the back and just replaced it with a bar. I'm pretty sure this bar does go all the way through. I've then just got a little bit of flat steel plate, put a load of these nuts on to match up with the existing holes in the flange on the end. Originally I was trying to make a crucible to melt aluminium in. So I was tumbling the general sort of dug up clay that I could, dried it out, tumbled it so that I could then start to sift it and filter it to get rid of all the rocks and stones. So this is still full of all of those rocks and stones, so I'm going to go empty that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the original design, which was this bit here. I had another bit that I bolted to here, so I don't know if you can tell, but there are two little screw holes from where it was originally assembled. I had another bit that would sit at this end in much the same way, and then I had basically two rods that went from end to end with a couple of scooter or skate wheels on. This one's disassembled, I'll get to that in a minute. Basically you had two wheels that would equally spread the weight, and either another two wheels here, or potentially just a spare steel rod. Because the one side only has to support it, the other side I'm actually using to drive it. So what I did is, because the washing machine motor I got from a washing machine, I also got this. So normally the washing machine motor sits off to one side, has a little belt, loops around this, gives it quite a big lever action so that it can turn all of the heavy stuff in the washing machine. So that is why I needed all of these extra bits and the base assembly, because I was doing it like this and it needed ground clearance. My plan now, however, is to take up less room, so I've not got something quite as bulky. I'm going to mount it just like this, with another bit at this end, so basically just drop the whole assembly down, and I'm going to drive it directly from a drill. So hopefully that'll be okay. I haven't tested the drill can actually turn it yet, but fingers crossed that's fine. So I just need to get myself another rod, a load of nuts and bolts, get some scooter wheels. The reason this one's assembled is that when it's got the bearings in, if I use some little steel washers either side and clamp nuts on it either side to get it nice and tight, the idea is that as I lock this in place, when I turn this, the wheel will turn with it, which means this will get pushed when it sits in the middle, but the bearings protrude just enough to stop that happening. So I'm going to machine something that will sit through the hole, keep it centred, but still allow me to clamp it. A little excessive, but I've got the tools, so I'm going to make the most of it. And this is just going to sit on top of the wheels like this and spin. So let's go empty this first of all. Okay, empty this out in the garden. It's full of a handful of stones, a little bit of clay dust, and oddly enough some springs from a trampoline. Don't ask me how they got in there. I was clearly doing something intelligent at the time. So I need to make a plate to cover this because the old one isn't particularly good. I covered it in tape to try and make it a bit more dust tight when it was in operation. Obviously there's going to be sand in here initially. I'm going to try a couple of different types. I'll do some sharp sand and some, is it playground sand or something? The sand that you tend to get more at like the beach or like the kids' play areas. Reason being is it's slightly softer and it therefore gives a higher polished finish, supposedly. But we'll find out as I try it. But the idea is I'll chuck all my stuff in. I just want a plate that I can get on and off nice and quickly because I want to be able to check it without messing around loads. So I've got two options. One of them is run a bar all the way through, secure it with a nut on the inside, a nut on the outside, clamp it down, which will leave this protruding out this end. I can then just run a big disc or plug of some sort down it, just a quick wing nut or something, clamp it down, and all is fine. The other alternative is to make some sort of a disc that fits in slightly on this inner lip. I might even use a bit of rubber that I've got laying around from some other projects, such as doing the milling machine and lathe way covers. So I could just cut a little strip of this and use that as a sealant with a metal bung. And then I could use like just two of these holes as securing points, so I can just drop it on and just a wing nut or something to clamp it up. So that is going to be the main body of this. There's already tape on here. There's like an extra wide band here and here, which is from where I originally had the skate wheels, so I'll be using those the same because that worked fine. It helps to give a little bit more grip, and should it wear out it's not going to damage this at all. I can't remember if I explained very well, but basically I'm going to be making another square like this, but instead the tumble unit's going to sit inside. So I'll have the beams running here and here, and then this will sit on the skate wheels like this, just a little bit lower to the ground. So like even like that, I may just use this box and drill the holes in it, as that is already the right length. And one of the things that I did find is that sometimes over time the tumble unit would actually move front or back and then start rubbing, which was why I had to have an extra bit at one end to stop it working its way off. So this box will work fine. Just need to countersink some holes to put the bearing mounts in on either end, machine something to go in here, and pretty much just start assembling. So I'm going to start with the machining of the bits to go in here, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I've made up these little spacers that are going to sit inside the wheels. So I've got one without the bearings here. That's going to sit in the middle there. Then it's going to sit on the rod here. And then with the washer there, this, can't see it, you can't see it very well, I can, but, there we go. The spacer then sits in the middle, doesn't protrude out either side, which means that the washers are going to clamp on the wheel so that as the bar spins, the wheels will spin. So that's both of these wheels now going to be locked to this, so when the drill motor is spinning this, it will spin my big red thing over here. Next step is sort this out and the other bits. These are just old bits of pallet wood. Doesn't look great, so I am just going to sand them down, make it look a tad nicer, possibly try and re-drill the holes so they look a little bit nicer, and I'm going to start assembling. Well, not particularly pretty. They are a damn sight nicer than they were before they started. Something like this. Compared to that, I think it looks a whole lot nicer and I'm not afraid to touch it. Whereas this is quite splintery at times. So these are considerably longer than the original bits I've put in, or had in. Then there's a few existing holes in the side of these because these are the original long bits. These are taller, so it's not going to look the prettiest, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount this one right at the far end. So I drill 2 more holes in here and here. I'm going to drill a hole in this sort of lower corner over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the wheel in and I'm going to move it up a little bit and in a little bit just to give it some clearance from the edge and the base. I'm going to mark a hole in the centre and then that will be where the axle line is. I'll do the same on this end, so that will give me a nice dead straight line across which the 2 drive wheels will sit. Then what I'll do is I'll pop this in and I'll put in the other axle and roughly align it. And what I'm going to do is I'll drill the holes on either end, but what I'll probably do at a later date is I'll turn it into a slot, and in the end, or in this bit of wood here, I'll have a bit of threaded bar, as it were, that will just gradually feed in, which will push up the axle that runs across on both ends, push it up, and that means I can have an adjustable size set of rollers. So if I get a smaller tub, or possibly even a larger tub, not by much, but potentially a little bit larger, I've got that adjustment within here without having to remake anything. So that means I could make a very small tumbler for jewellery, say. So that's the plan. Going to start drilling the holes, and I'll keep the length similar length. So there's a set of drill holes here and here. So this part will probably go about here, which is the length of this. So that'll sit in there with a bit of room. But what the plan is that this will then give me a little bit of space if I can get around to making a just a drill motor, no actual drill, which, so at the moment I'll be using a mains powered drill just because it's one I've got floating around, because I brought some nice dual battery powered stuff that's great. The mains powered drill was a cheap one, so I'm happy to use it, and if it blows up I have spotted a one for £24 on Screwfix. So I'll take the motor out of it if I do, and I'll just mount it here, and there's a bit of space, so that should all fit. So that's the plan. I'll drill the holes. In here I will be mounting some bearings on either end, and the same here. I'll just use a Forstner bit. I'll show you up close a picture of what one of those is when I drill in, but that'll give me a little recess just to mount the bearings, and these are old roller skate bearings. Nothing's moving very quick here, so I'm quite happy to use some old dodgy bearings. And that's that. I'll get drilling. So as you can see, I've shown you what a Forstner bit is. I then drilled a hole that's 22mm in size, which is the exact same size as the outside diameter of the bearings, so they fit in quite nicely. I've then gone and drilled just a teeny tiny recess within that hole with a slightly smaller Forstner bit, and that will give clearance to the inner section of the bearing that will be rotating. That will just stop there being any friction. Probably wouldn't have made a difference. I'm just trying to do a half decent job. Had I thought about it sooner, I should have gone through with the smaller Forstner bit and then finished with the larger one, but that's a problem for another day. What I've got here now is I've got a ruler that I've just clamped to the pillar drill, and I've marked up some lines on the wood. This is going to be my adjustable slot section where the movable leg or arm, whatever, rollers will go. And I'm just going to go down and chain drill with a 12mm Forstner bit. I've gone with 12mm because I'm using an 8mm bar. That will give me another 4mm of clearance, so 2mm top and bottom, and my plan is to make some sort of block or spacer that will be square, will sit in the slot, and then from the end I'll have a adjustable screw that will be able to move that block up and down, or perhaps some clamps on the front and back of it that will just clamp to the wood, and then the square block will help to lock it in place. Haven't decided quite the mechanism yet, but basically I need a slot and it's going to be 12mm big, and the ruler is clamped to the table to make sure that as I slide it I get a consistent depth on every drill hole. So I've got the frame all assembled. All I need to do is put the bars in, put the wheels on, and obviously I've got these that I've made earlier on the lathe. So I'm going to start assembling it. I've got a selection of bearings that have come out the skate wheels. Some of them have got this little standoff that would normally sit inside of the wheel. I'm going to use these with this bit facing in from the wooden section. This will just give me a little bit of extra clearance room so that I can put a nut and washer up against it without the risk of anything rubbing against the wood. So I'm just going to pop those in. All I need to do is get one half of the bar roughly done, slide it in, and then slide the other in, and then just start spacing everything out accordingly. So both the wheels are going to need these spacers that I made. So we've got nut, washer, spacer with the wheel, the other washer, the other nut, and then I'm going to have a double nut on either end. So I'll do the double nuts up, and they'll be up against these two sets of bearings with a washer as well. Remember how I said that it was going to all fit on? Well, this bar is slightly too long, so what I'm going to do is I'm using a drill to force feed the nuts on, and I'm going to put it in from one end, gradually feed on all the components until it reaches the other end. Okay, so the video has been a bit of a nightmare because I hurt myself halfway through making this and haven't been able to carry on. But luckily a friend of mine came over yesterday. It helps me do the final assembly and get this up and running. So all I've done is I've taken another bit of threaded bar, run it across, and I've got a couple of wing nuts on here, here, here and here, just to so these are in the slots, so that way I can tighten up the wing nuts, lock it in place, which allows me to adjust how big a drum that I can fit in. And then in the middle, all I've got is a series of just plastic spacers and some skate bearings in between. Once it's on, it only really runs on one or two skate bearings, but that's all it needs. It just needs something to support the upper half of the tumbler. So I've got some sand. I tried it out yesterday. It was a little bit damp still, so in a couple of places it was getting stuck to the inside of the drum. So what I've got is I've got a garage full of saucepans and all sorts of cooking utensils full of sand just to try and dry it out. So hopefully it's drier than it was. It's not clumping together as much, so I'm willing to give it a try. It's just some sharp sand from wicks, and I'm going to funnel it in, chuck the pen and a couple of other bits I want to try and polish up into the drum, and I'm going to set it running for about an hour and see how it polishes up. Okay, full of sand, one pen and two rings made out of some odd nut, and a couple of inner bits that go inside the pen, so the piston type bit that sits inside. What I've done is any threaded bits I've screwed together, so that way the threads won't get worn down while it's getting tumbled, but all the visible bits will hopefully get polished up. Okay, last step is to turn the drill on. The drill's got a little switch on it that allows you to lock the trigger in, and there is a variable speed adjustment on the front. So what I'm going to do is, I've got the gearbox on the lowest setting, I'm going to turn it on, hit the switch and leave it for a little while, come back and check on it, see how it's polished up and show you guys what the results are. I'll see you in a little bit. So, all in all, I'm really impressed with it. I'm pleased I've made it, and I'm pleased to put the time and effort in to make it. This is the pen. I'm not going to show you too close so I don't ruin the surprise for my nan. I did have a couple of these which are just little letter stamps that my dad gave me. They were quite rusted, a little bit corroded in places. It's turned out those quite nicely in a relatively short space of time, so a little bit more time in there. Actually, I think they would come out really nice. With the sharp sand, it does tend to leave a bit of a stone wash kind of finish, but on this it completely got rid of all the scratches, even some of the deep set ones which I was worried about and couldn't sand out. So it got rid of those after a bit of time. With the larger stones, later on I sieved out so it was just the fine sand grains left. That tended not to actually do a lot, so I wouldn't waste your time if you're going to do it. What I have done is I've also ordered a kilo of 1200 grit carbide grain, so I'm going to stick that in there and tumble something else and see how that turns out, because 1200 grit, I'm expecting not quite a mirror finish but certainly close, and I should be able to polish that up to a mirror finish. So I've got quite high hopes for that. I'll do another video then about it as well. If you want any more information about this, I'll put it into the same video, so let me know in the comments. The rings themselves, I'll show you some close-ups of, but as you'll be able to see when I do the close-up, it's got rid of some of the scratching and some of the tooling marks, but they are still there, and I think I needed to leave the larger stones in from the sharp sand to actually get rid of the deeper stuff. But it does leave it with a nice consistent finish, and for the most part that's all I'm interested in, is something consistent. So I think that's about it for this video. Like I said, if you've got any questions, please do leave them down below. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please do consider subscribing. It will be much appreciated, and I'll see you in the next video.